All right,
Woo!
here we go.
Here we are.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Dana Stringham.
It's Tuesday night. I'm Autumn Stringham.
We love this stuff. This is awesome. This is our regular Tuesday night product conversation.
That's right.
We've been doing this for, I don't know how long. It feels like forever.
100 years or so.
But we love it, and it's really awesome. And tonight, we are on episode number 4, the final episode.
Final episode of The Price of Discovery, the EMPowerplus Miracles. So again, we've been talking this story way too long, like for 25 years long, and the story just keeps getting longer every year, you know. We decided we're just going to get it out here. I'm going to do a really fast recap.
Yeah, because those of you who missed it, it's also available episodes 1 to 3 on YouTube, but we're just going to recap what we've talked and what we've covered so far.
Okay, I'm going to speed you through the 1990s in like 30 seconds or less. I was super, super sick with multiple diagnoses. I reverently say my mother took her own life and started something amazing and horrible all at once. It was the most painful thing and ultimately led to such a level of desperation in my family that it leveled up everybody's efforts to find an answer for me. And my dad ultimately ended up having a crazy conversation in a miraculous way and ultimately came up with a discovery that for a long while was called pig pills in Canada. It was just kind of mocked.
And it was just a program of a bunch of different things.
Yep. Bunch of different
It wasn't actually an all-in-one pill at this point.
That's right. It was a huge, crude conglomerate of products. And then I started onto that in 1996 and went through an initial super quick reaction that convinced us that it was a worthy journey. And then went through some really hard things because I came off of 5 psych meds. And so, boy, did things get tough for a while, didn't they?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
It was hard.
Absolutely.
Yep. So after about the first 1,000 people in our communities came on and started using this really crazy concoction of liquid and powders and whatever, they started doing data collection. And my father is incredibly faithful and he's an engineer. So he started gathering a lot of information from people and started perfecting the formulation. And we got into that in episode 3.
In episode 3. And I'm just going to point out here again really quickly, you know, this conglomerate, this concoction of stuff that we had, the reason why we had to do that is because there was nothing available, you know, in the supplement market that even came close to this recipe that they had developed in the animal feed industry.
That's right.
So that's the reason why, you know, initially there was this concoction.
There was nothing even close in human grade consumable form. Nothing. That's right.
There's lots of stuff that have some of the same ingredients that we have, but nothing with those critical ratio imbalances and everything else that we talk about quite often. But anyway. So
that takes us to 1999, which was a magical year. That was a good year.
That was the year our daughter was born.
It was actually. Yeah. So at the beginning of that year, we found out that I was expecting a baby, and that had been 7-year gap between our last baby, our first baby, and this next one. And so we really felt like there was hope. I was healthier than I had ever been in my entire life.
We were told we weren't going to have any more babies.
We were told we would never. This was
an amazing thing for us. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It was a miracle. And actually found out that I was pregnant while I was on a business trip, meeting with a prominent member of our community who was prepared to help fund and get all this huge crude conglomerate into an all-in-one product.
Capsule form.
Yep. So taking my father's perfected formulation and moving it into capsules so that research could go forward. And it did. The first real research started when they were able to do a placebo and have something that could actually have a placebo made for it. Right. So that's when the first real research started. In 2001, now we're getting into new stuff. In 2001, the very first research was published in a medical journal.
Right. That was on bipolar, I think it was.
It was.
It was amazing, actually.
Yes.
Groundbreaking study on nutrition. First of its kind, as far as we know.
And Dr. Bonnie Kaplan at the University of Calgary and the Alberta Children's Hospital had headed that, managed to get some funding from the Alberta government for additional research. And things were finally moving forward. She had a group of incredible people on the science side doing their thing. And of course we had no influence on that at all, but we were so thrilled to see something that we knew was working and that we had seen working in so many thousands of other people's lives, actually being researched by people who were not connected, at all,
and not us funding it or anything else. She had secured a grant for more than $500,000 to start conducting this research,
and that's how impactful it was. That's when my dad got the first letter from the Canadian government that told him to cease and desist.
Yeah. That's where things got.
Let's just leave it there.
And that's where everything turned upside down. It was kind of an interesting time. Absolutely.
So according to the Canadian government rules at the time, and maybe even now, there are certain illnesses that fall under a classification that can only be treated with drugs. And so if Dana takes a vitamin mineral formulation and feels better, it's just vitamins and minerals. But if Autumn takes the exact same thing in the exact same dosage, it has to be regulated as a drug.
Especially
if I had been identified with a disease that was classified.
Right. Yeah, because you said you were taking it for bipolar disease. So, I mean, there's similar things here in the U.S., of course, as well, right? We have to be careful with the kind of, claims we can make. And I understand why. I mean, could be a lot of potential misinformation out there. So we don't make claims. We point to the research, we point to the history, and, people can make their own judgments and decisions on those things.
That's right. So the results for me had nothing to do with what my doctor called me, or even medications that I had taken in the past and no longer required. What it had to do is that I just felt a lot better. I was calmer, clearer headed, and able to cope with stress in a new way. And that's how we talk about it now.
Right.
So we had to battle though, because I was pregnant with our third daughter when we got a letter saying that I had to stop using and would no longer evermore have access to EMPowerplus. And that I needed to go to a doctor and return to standard treatment. But standard treatment hadn't worked for me. 13 medications, multiple hospitalizations, and now I had 4 kids and not one. There was no chance that I was going to be able to function as a mom if I had to go back to where I had been in my early 20s.
No, and we didn't, I mean, for those of you who've watched the previous episodes, right, we talked about this whole thing, and initially, early on, I was pretty concerned. I'm like, I don't know if this is going to work. We end up going back on meds, whatever. But, after it's been literally several years, it was like, oh, no. You're not going back to that. It's like nobody's going to tell us this isn't working, because it's working. And you're doing better than ever and all that stuff. We've not a brand new kid that we didn't think we'd have, all that stuff.
I was like 7 years in,
Yeah. So that was pretty critical time.
So given that, while 6 months pregnant with our third daughter, we had to go and fight. So we went to our nation's capital in Canada. That's where we used to live. And I had been writing through 3 pregnancies, and I had to start all over again. I actually had a manuscript that was ready to be published right when this whole thing happened with the Canadian government. And it kind of set us all back because we realized we weren't done living the story.
And so actually it ended up being a good thing, because Autumn ended up having to write that other part of the story, which included this whole battle that we had to go through in early 2003, the court case thing, which was we eventually won, and have been able to go forward ever since. And so I am super excited, because I don't think people understand, or I don't think people know. Most of you know that Autumn has written a book called The Promise of Hope, right? But I thought it'd be interesting tonight to show you guys something you've probably never seen before. Red. So do you see this here? This is an amazing book called These Painted Wings. So why did you, and this was Autumn's initial first self-published version of A Promise of Hope. And there's actually a bunch of stuff in here that is not included in A Promise of Hope. Extra information, there's even like some sweet pictures back here. I'd forgotten about these pictures.
There's photos.
But there's like photos and all sorts of good stuff in the back of her book. I mean, this is just an amazing book. Yeah. And it's actually this book here that got the publishers interested at HarperCollins. They read this manuscript and were like, holy cow. And normally they would never take a self-published book and and publish it themselves, but they read her book and realized how powerful it was and turned it into the book that you see here today, A Promise of Hope.
which is tighter and shorter and better.
But amazing. And honestly, some people, you know, the thing that's the most amazing for me, at least anyway. Oh, and by the way, it's also on audio, but not CDs anymore. People don't even know what CDs are. But anyway, it's also on audiobook, which is cool. Some of you know that. So it's available for download on Audible and everything else. Autumn narrates it, which is kind of cool, right? Yeah. And so some of you may not realize just where this whole thing came from. And the feedback that I get, which I'm super excited about for, you know, when people read this book, and it's been 13 years now since this was, but wait, how long? 13 years, yes. 13 years since this book was published in 2007.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? And the feedback that I continue to get over these 13 years is that people, they just feel like Autumn's book has given them a voice, right? Has kind of brought life to their, what they didn't dare share with people, right? It's kind of opened that door to understanding what bipolar is, and more importantly, that there's hope out there, and how, you know, how some people can get help and overcome.
I think that was really the most important part, because it was an 8-year project. By the time we finished the battle and rewrote the back end of the book, it was an 8-year project. And
it was,
and that was a worthy way to spend time, because it helped me to revisit a lot of things in my past. And even, do you remember the time that we went to my childhood home and I was allowed to go in and tour it?
Yes.
They let me in my old childhood home. I told them, you know, I'm writing a book and I just need to know that it's true, like everything. So I want to know where the bathroom was and make sure that I'm not making that up. You know, like I want to know how big that landing is. Like, you know, like,
and the thing that's truly incredible to me is that, you know, the stuff that you had written in your book was completely and totally accurate. You know, from a young kid memory, like an extremely good memory, to be able to remember those things and the little details. And more importantly, you know, for those of you who haven't read it, I know this kind of seems like a shameless plug for Autumn's book, but it's really not. I mean, it's truly a life-changing book for so many people. And just, you know, by evidence of the fact that just the other day, somebody brand new to, you know, EMPowerplus and everything else, read Autumn's book for the first time, actually listened to your book.
Yeah, she got it on Audible.
Yeah, did the Audible thing, download it, and listened to it in what, 2 days?
Yeah, that's like 8 hours of listening in 2 days.
And that's kind of a typical thing, because it's one of those things where, you know, such a good writer, first of all, right? Just being able to draw the reader into the story. But I think more importantly, just, you know, again, giving that voice, helping people understand what bipolar is, you know, kind of, you know, doing a lot to reduce the stigma that surrounds mental illness and bipolar disorder in particular, and help, you know, greater understanding for those that might be going through it themselves. But I want to ask you initially why you called this These Painted Wings. Do you remember why you did that?
So I'll tell you about that. So the whole reason that I started writing was because I needed to forgive my mom enough that I could raise a daughter and not create more of a cycle. So one of these days, I'm going to crack open that chapter in These Painted Rings, and I will read it. I'll do an author reading.
Awesome.
And explain that, because it's deep, and I don't feel like crying today, so I'm not going to. But The Painted Wings is about forgiveness. And I feel like right now would be a great time to just share this. When Dr. Popper, who is a psychopharmacologist from McLean's Hospital in Harvard University, from Harvard Medical School, when he wrote the afterword for my book, some people were like not happy about it, because he did not tout EMPowerplus as my cure the way that HarperCollins did. He talked about me as a whole person and having had really hard experiences, and also being fortunate enough to have somebody like Dana and somebody like my father in my life. And that is an important part of healing. As people become clear in the head, it doesn't change your past, you know, and there are things to employ and things that I try to teach, even online. Absolutely. I get a little cheesy, but on Feel Better, on Facebook, the Feel Better with Autumn Stringham group, we're doing a lot of talk, and it just seems like a spontaneous thing. But the more that I'm talking to people like me, who are in the midst of their learning how to feel better, the more I realize that there's always pain and trauma associated with the most severe illness. And a part of that unraveling is really forgiving.
Absolutely. In fact,
And
it's
I don't say that
amazing.
lightly. I'm not saying that that's an easy thing. Hard to do.
And I think when you say forgiving, you mean just as much yourself for things that, were said, done, whatever, as anybody else who may have been a perpetrator or something, right?
Yeah. Well, and just realizing that as much as I'm a victim, I'm also a perpetrator, that we all live on both sides of that equation at some point. And that that's part of the circle of life. That's part of the beauty of being human and having a terrible, horrible, beautiful human experience is that as we get clear in our heads, we can move forward and realize that there's something so much better to come from hard experiences, and that we really can make a full whole person discovery about ourselves. And ultimately for me, it was about my faith, and just realizing that I can let some things go and let someone else take care of it. And that's not something I could have done on a 5-med cocktail while living in a permanent adult facility. Like, that was never going to happen. But getting some things straightened out with my chemistry and allowing me to feel safe, physically safe, having my needs met and having my brain fed, really opened the door for healing. And then I've had to learn a lot of skills. And part of my healing really was in the writing.
Being able to just put it out there, right?
To put it
some
out
things
there,
that were
but
hard to vocalize, but maybe, on some level was easier to put it in writing first, right?
yeah, there was nothing easy about putting it in writing, but in the editing process and going over and over and over, there's a lot of forgiving and repenting in that process too. Like, it was actually kind of amazing to boil it down to what is real and true and not just what I felt.
Interesting. Yeah.
And it's been a beautiful process. So I would encourage all of you to tell your stories. We've really indulged ourselves. We're ridiculous and acting like a little narcissistic about this.
Not at all.
4 weeks in a row. Like, come on, that's silly.
No, but I really think
have
this
told
is
our
this
story.
Is huge. Yeah.
Yeah. And in the telling of our stories, I want to encourage all of you to tell your story. Yeah. But don't tell your angry story and your victim story. Like, work it out any way you need to, on paper, on your knees, on somebody's table, like however you need to work things out, work it out. And when you know your story and you are at peace with the telling, and it doesn't make you angry anymore, or it doesn't make you vomit anymore, then you're ready to tell it. And then you share what is true and real, and watch the healing that happens. It's an amazing experience to be able to share that you've been somewhere so dark and that you've been able to step into some amazing place where there's light and hope. And my goodness, there's hope. You got to do you do the recap. Well, you get to tell like where we're at now. Well, so including like this, but then also the family, like spouts and numbers. Let's go.
Okay. Well, the recap is that, we're an amazing, and here's the thing, everything that Autumn just said, 100%, agree with, totally true. Just be patient. I mean, there's so many people that are on different levels of healing. They're on this continuum, so to speak. I mean, we're 25 years into this now, 25 years since, the last medication you took or whatever, right? There are people that are starting this program or getting on EMPowerplus for the first time today, right? And so there's going to be a bit of a process there, and that's okay. Like, you got to start somewhere. And so that's something that I would totally add, is just be patient. That's what it takes. It's just time and patience, and there's totally hope out there. You're right.
Sorry, I just remembered.
We just love what we do.
I love it so much. Sorry. I was talking to a woman today on the phone, and she's just in that first baby stage, and she's so scared.
Yeah.
And nothing in her whole life has worked for her, and her family's on the rocks. And there's probably 7 of you out there that think I'm talking about you. Because we talked to so many people.
There's so many people that are going through similar experiences.
Yeah, and it just thrills me to think that somebody else is starting a journey that we started 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Because there's so much hope in it.
Yeah, we can look back and just cheer and be like, it's okay. Just keep going. There'll be hard times.
I feel like I'm everybody's mom right now. You've got this, babies.
It's true. And it's weird. When we first started this series, it was hard on some level to look back and remember some of these tough times. It really was. It was like, oh man, yeah, I forgot about that. That's brutal. And eventually who's ever, you are that's going through this right now, you'll be able to do that same thing and look back and realize, man, that was a rough time. I'm glad we're past that.
But it's in the past.
Exactly. And that's kind of the exciting thing.
It's a journey. It's a worthy journey. It's a worthy journey to have been so sick or so hurt. It's okay. It's okay that happened.
It is okay.
Because there's another side to the story. And as your story unfolds and you see the whole thing from a new perspective, you'll be grateful for the experience. I know I am.
Absolutely. Start today. And yeah, things change quickly. And it's amazing. And lean in for support. Autumn's doing amazing things with her Facebook page.
Yeah, Feel Better with Autumn Stringham.
Truly amazing stuff. I
love the people on there lately. Like, we're having a lot of fun.
Well, and a lot of the principles that you share, you know, in your book and whatever, you're addressing on the.
I just don't want people to think that I'm saying that there's a pill for that. Or even that a mineral is going to solve the whole thing. It just won't. But getting that feeling of safety and getting fed on the inside with the right ratios, it changes everything about the way that you can perceive things when you're calm. And
absolutely.
And then healing can begin. So
and that's the key. There's two parts to this, of course. And you know, the EMPowerplus, the micronutrients are absolutely essential, but it's not the full answer for people that are struggling and having, you know, severe issues. It's the total answer for people who just want, you know, better health, better sleep, and more energy, whatever. Sure, that's fine. But somebody who's been through something like you've been through, now you need that little extra support. And realize that you can make it through. It just takes some time, and just be patient with yourself. That's the most important thing I can share with you.
I know that there's a lot of other people who are on their journey also, and who have really made it like kind of the halfway point, and they're at the point where they want to also be momming everybody and helping everyone else.
Yes,
you know,
got a bunch
to
of
come
good people
up
doing that exact same thing, and I love it. It's amazing.
So if this has been shared with you by somebody who's at that point in their life, lean into them for support, and then come over anyway and tell me your story.
Absolutely.
Because we want to be able to. I love the good stories. I love the hard stories too, but I also love the good news.
If it weren't for the good stories, I don't know if we could continue doing what we're doing. And that's really the truth. I mean, we've heard so many amazing positive stories that, you know, make whatever we went through look like nothing at some level, right? And be able to turn around and come back into their lives and their families and their communities. And that's pretty cool. That's really rewarding to be a part of that. So, and thank you for all of you that are out there doing the same thing. And we know there's a bunch of you as well. So thank you for all that.
It's going to take a small army to change the world.
Absolutely. All right. So join us next week. We're done with our little storytelling here, but we're going to have a special guest on next week who she's a practitioner that really understands how vitamins, minerals, and all that kind of stuff work in our body. So it's going to be super cool to talk to her.
First I've heard of it. I'm excited. I'll see you next on
Absolutely.
Tuesday.
Next Tuesday, we'll do it all over
again. Find out who our
secret
guest is.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. Bye-bye now.
Bye.